Thank you. Got it. Thank you, Counselor. And thank you, Rosewood residents, for joining us this evening. I've met some of you, if not most of you, and for those of you who I haven't met, good to see you again. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Damon Berlin, and I do stakeholder relations for the LRT project, specifically in Ward 7. So Whitehaven, you've got me for better or for worse. I do hope it's for better. I've been working with, thank you, John. I've been working with the LRT projects as stakeholder relations since 2013. My gosh. And it's been a wild ride, and we're really excited about where we're at in the Stage 2 project. And those of you who I have talked with before have raised concerns. Once we got past the clearing of trees, which was all-encompassing in 2019, we started to look at and consider the fact that, my gosh, the train is going to be right there. And now I can see it, I can feel it, I can hear it. This is happening in my mind. Then I started to get those calls, I started to get those emails. And what we've been saying from that time is that, no, we're not ignoring you. And honestly, we weren't. But as a design build, in 2019, when the contract award occurred, a lot of things became the responsibility of KEV, and that is a consortium, not an individual, but the consortium undertaking the construction. KEV, Kiewit, Eurovia, Vinci. They were required to do many things, and one of the many things they were required to do was undertake a noise and vibration assessment of the entire east-west alignment. And including in that would be the area just south of Carling Avenue, including everywhere else, but as it pertains to you. And in the summer, we did receive a draft report, and we've been working diligently with the team who I'm about to introduce you to on what that report means, consulting even further with some third-party validations, and making sure that what Kev might have been suggesting, what we suggested, what we thought, we made sure that it wasn't just the cat minding the mice, but we wanted to validate all of that information, and we wanted to ensure that what was being suggested made the most sense for you, the residents, the people who are going to be looking at it in your backyard. Now, I shall say that I am happy to introduce Martha Lush, who is our wonderful landscape architect, and will be doing the presentation, delivering the presentation this evening. Also from the city, we have Alan Oldfield, who is our acoustical engineer. He's not with the city, but he's with the city in that he's our acoustical engineer from AECOM, who we have on retainer to do some very important work for us. We have Rosanna Baggs, who is calling in as she's en route from Toronto in a train, if anybody can remember what it's like to travel. I certainly can't. And there we are. Thank you, Rosanna. Masked up, COVID safe, COVID wise. And Rashid Jor, who is our track expert within our project, and was heavily involved, for example, in the mitigations that we undertook over at 215 Parkdale, as in sort of like a reactionary, and what we're doing now is proactive. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Martha, and I'm going to say we do things a little differently in these small venues. If you guys have questions, we'd like you to be able to ask them. We'd love to be able to answer them. We're going to be talking about construction. We're going to be talking about noise mitigation, and we're doing this for you. So please, we would like to make sure that you feel good about asking questions. With that, I'm turning it over to Martha. Thank you so much.
Hey, hi. I'm having my fair share of technical difficulties today, so give me 1 second. I want to share my screen, and when you, so everybody can now see it. Is that a yay? Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to start back at the very beginning. I was working on the preliminary design with the design team from the city back in 2015-16. So met with some of the community members. So we are very familiar. Damon and I have been working closely on this one over the years. And as he indicated, this is more of a conversation as opposed to a presentation. So if there's any questions you would like to ask as we go through this presentation this evening, please feel free. Damon's going to assist because I get sidetracked and trying to kind of work my way through the presentation, but it is really a discussion as to where are we and what are we planning on doing. So for your community, Rosewood Avenue, we had the transitway. Carling Avenue is on the left-hand side. The current transitway is kind of bisecting the drawing. The original Woodruff Bridge shown on the right-hand side and the connection to Woodruff High School. And then there is also another connection through from Rosewood through to Carling Avenue. So when we looked at your particular community, we knew we needed to go under Carling Avenue. It has to be grade separated. We knew there was going to be some impacts. We also were very careful during the preliminary planning to make sure that connectivity was addressed and maintained. So what this is where we started. This is the 2016 preliminary design. I'm not sure where everybody sits on this, so I will give a little bit of a background. If I'm going too slow and this is all repeat of information, please let me know. But there is the original Woodruff pedestrian bridge. We are putting in a new one. There is a commitment by the city that the new one has to be open and ready to go before the old one can be taken out of place, so that there's always going to be that connection from the east to the west side of the corridor. We call it the Pinecrest Creek corridor, the NCC lands. Lincoln Field Station gets shifted a little bit further east. Right now, it's right beside the transit corridor. We've shifted it east for a couple of reasons, and one of them is from a stormwater management perspective to address it a little bit better. We've also added, we were also talking about adding in a crosswalk and a cross ride at Carling Avenue, right where you come out of from Rosewood, so you can cross over Carling Avenue in a safe manner, as opposed to having that really wonderful chain link fence that sometimes the city has to put up. So this is where we started from in 2016. And where we are right now is the construction zone has been set up immediately to the west of your homes. The pathway, the multi-use pathway, has already been built to a certain extent so that we can maintain that connectivity to Lincoln Field Station. And again, that was one thing that the contractor must do at all times. The construction zones are here. I know it was problematic in the summer when they were building the multi-use pathway and kind of doing some of the shaping, because the work was literally happening right outside your backyards. And Rosanna and I were out there on occasion just to take a feel for what was actually going on. One of the good things that was happening is because that multi-use pathway is now built, and the construction access is coming off of the transitway, things have shifted, maybe not a great distance, but they've shifted a little bit further away from your rear yards. The construction access happens between the two sides of the multi-use pathway, really close to the transitway. And if the trucks are crossing the pathway, as I'm sure you've seen so far, there's flag people in place, pedestrians and cyclists have a safe route. And safety has been one of the key elements that have been discussed. So, and the construction fence is up. So everything's it's a little bit more settled. I know it's still a long way to go before we're done, but we're
Martha,
slowly, yeah.
I'm just going to interrupt really quickly here. John has a question. I hope you don't mind the interruption.
Oh, absolutely. No, not at all.
Please go ahead, John.
Thank you. Just a couple of points. The pathway, the multi-use pathway, has been paved all the way over from the school over to and connects to the Rosewood Carling pathway right behind our house. They've been doing some of that work through the middle of the night when in the last week to finish it off. Trying to understand why they couldn't pave and couldn't roll out and put the stones down in the middle of the day, because it's still a work zone. That area that you say is they're not working necessarily in that zone, they're more over around the pad, is a little bit of a misnomer, because they are dumping tons of fill in that space. So there may not technically be working, digging, or doing anything in there, but they're using it as a workspace. And while most of the trucks are using the broadband backup alarms. We're not hearing the trucks as they back up. The excavator and the bulldozers that they use sound like a couple of angry squirrels fighting with each other as they back up. So they have not implemented any sort of sound dampening for the rear alarms. The other side is that a number of the dump trucks in the last 2 weeks have not been using any sort of tailgate damping devices. So there has been a tremendous amount of clashing.
Sorry, my understanding was that the asphalt work, the first lift of asphalt through here had been installed, and you're saying they added more asphalt recently?
So if where you have right behind the houses where you have the bend, and then it continues the yellow line over towards the Carling path immediately behind
Straight north. Instead of jogging,
north.
You're suggesting it goes straight north and connects.
It goes right along. It is now paved and in place.
Oh,
They
okay.
still have mesh fences, a mesh fence at the end closest to the school,
Okay.
and one at the where the Y is to get out to Carling. But it is now, but there are people who are walking along it. There's people are walking their dogs through there. There are students going along there as well. Not so many today because of the snow and the crap that was on it, but it's there and it's in use. I have a lovely photo of them last week when they were putting the bitumen down, the paving, and I had these lovely noxious clouds in the backyard while they were doing it during the day. So that's the only work that they've done during the day is the paving.
John, I thank you for that clarification and those points that you've raised. And it is something that we're dealing with in other places, is those fill sites. And
I understand the value of
is
having
the
that space
issue.
for fill. It really is good. It's close to where everything needs to be. It's just that if they're going to go through and do that, can they please put some sound damping on the tailgates? That's all.
I've made those notes. Thank you, John.
And, I mean, it's hard when they dump rock into a metal dump truck.
That's impossible to mitigate. Yeah, exactly.
You get 103 on the decibel reader on my phone, which is not that accurate for that 3 seconds. And then you wait another 20 minutes and you get it again. So I'll be quiet for a bit.
No, I appreciate that, because it was, we were of the understanding that they had kind of moved a little bit further away from the properties. So it is something definitely to take away and understand what's happening and see what we can do to help that situation.
And
especially the evening hours.
This image that we've used, we built this presentation a few weeks ago, and there has been quite a bit of progress. And so we apologize for not having the most current drawings available, and that is on me. So thank you also for that point, John.
So, okay, so then we were just highlighting where the access point is, but I think, oops, sorry. So point number 3, we thought the MUP construction was complete. Obviously, we were mistaken. With one layer of asphalt installed, and our understanding was the final layer of asphalt would be installed at the very end, so that there'd be the MUP would be newly finished when everything was over with. The current activities really are focusing on getting the pedestrian bridge up and installed. So they need to remove the original bridge before they can get into a lot of the alignment work. So that bridge is really key for them. And they are starting on the alignment, the guideway construction. And the first thing that they're doing is the services that go underneath the guideway. So it's at its kind of, they're doing the excavation, getting down as far as they need to go before they can start backfilling and finishing off the utilities. So that is where we are right now. So the noise attenuation is one of the key focuses. We thought there was 2. We thought the construction activities would be one and the noise attenuation would be the second one. And so literally within the project agreement, there was a requirement for the contractor to complete a noise attenuation study. We now have received that draft study, and the city is reviewing it. They're doing a third-party review to make sure that they're comfortable with all the recommendations and direction that the EWC is going in, the contractor is going in. And Alan is online and he can answer any more specific questions a little bit further in. But just to give you where we are right now, the noise study did take a look at the alignment and looked at what perceptible noise, what we could do for noise attenuation that perceptibly reduces it. 1 or 2 decibels, it's difficult or impossible for the human ear to distinguish. When we get to 5, it's a perceptible difference, and you can audibly hear that difference. So for your particular community on the south side of Carling, the report identifies the need for a noise attenuation wall between the alignment and your rear yards. So right at the top of the embankment. And we are moving the wall as close as we can to the alignment, maximize, for a couple of reasons, maximize the noise attenuation capability of the wall. And it also gives you the furthest offset distance from your rear property lines to the noise wall. So you have a wide corridor the pathway goes through, as opposed to being in a really constrained space. So we did look, or the report did look at all engineering elements. So the noise wall that's on the left-hand side was what was recommended in this particular location, but all elements that were looked at, and they included acoustical wall panels. So they look kind of like a noise wall, but they have the ability to fracture and absorb some of the energy of the noise waves, and that was not considered a requirement here because we needed the height of the wall, and it would or offset far enough from the community to the west that the acoustical wall panels weren't considered a requirement. And we also looked at rail dampeners, and that would assist in controlling the wheel noise and dampening and Alan's going to correct me because I can't remember all the technical details, but the rail dampeners were also considered. And in this location, it wasn't going to give us what we needed to get the noise down to a level that was a perceptible difference. The best thing we could do were the noise walls. So we also started to take a look so everybody could understand what this was going to look like. And it's a difficult, to a certain extent, to fully understand, but what we looked at is where there was going to be a noise level of 60 decibels, 65 and 70. So the yellow, the orange, the red. So without the noise attenuation, you can start to see how the noise, you'd be impacted on your rear yards. And then when we add the noise wall, you're not impacted by that noise level along that side. So the noise wall really commences at Carling Avenue and comes all the way along the top of the embankment until we hit on the embankment that's required for the Woodruff pedestrian bridge. So there's a real clear drop in the quality or the quantity of the noise when we add in the attenuation of the walls. And I've got 6. Is there anybody that has a question, comment to Alan or to myself before we move forward into the rest of this? John?
Me again. Sorry, there are a bunch of them. Where are the track switches located along this particular spread? Because you're going to require to have the tracks trains switching from tracks, and the switches moving trains to different areas, whether it's going to the west, going south, whether it's coming back in. Trying to figure out where they are, because that's going to be one of the points where there is going to be a fair amount of noise around those particular switches. The reason that I have a bit of a concern about that is having worked for Via Rail for a number of years and understanding where and how switches are worked and how they're maintained, that they aren't silent. And so it's not only the trains, but it's also the switches that can cause a problem.
Great question, John. And Rashid, I don't suppose you have that information handily available right now. And if you don't, this is something that we can get back to you. But Rashid, please let us know.
I was actually looking for them. I can look for them, so I'm not wasting time. But we did the impacts from the switches. The switch impact noise was looked at. So
So that's reflected in this noise attenuation.
Exactly. Yes. I guess Alan can confirm.
And maybe Rashid, compared to the track switches that Via Rail uses, or that technology, is it the same technology or does it differ that we're using? And can you speak to those differences?
They're going to be similar. They're what they call fixed point frogs. So it's a non-movable switch point and a non-movable frog. That's really where the impact comes from. It's where you cross one track into the other. One of the wheels has to cross a gap, and when it does, what you hear is the wheel impact noise as it traverses the gap. So it's a very small gap. We're talking 50 millimeters, but it's in terms of the type of frog, it's identical to those used by Via Rail and CN, CP, everybody else. It's a fixed frog.
So would it be safe to say, Rashid, that we could provide this information after the meeting, so that could be reviewed? Where that
Absolutely, yeah.
Switching gears located. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we could definitely.
Excellent. Okay.
John,
thank you very much.
Perfect. I got a thumbs up from John. I like that. Do you have another question, or are we good? Perfect. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
No problem. Yep. It's Mark Shammy here. The question I had was this, that wall or fence, on what side of the pedestrian walkway is it going to be?
Can you see my cursor?
I can.
Okay, so the wall is close as possible to the embankment and to the alignment. So there will be a couple of illustrations we have in the next part that will show you the relationship for how offset it is, but really close to the top of the hill or the top of the embankment for the alignment.
I don't know what you mean by embankment. I'm sorry.
Okay, so currently I always talk with my hands. The alignment goes underneath Carling Avenue. So it stays down low and it'll slowly start to rise up. So it's going to be, it's kind of the same, closer to your backyard, but kind of at the same level as the transitway currently is, right? Because the transitway goes under Carling Avenue and this alignment will go under Carling Avenue as well. The train tracks will go under Carling Avenue. So it's going to be, and that's one of the things that they're working on is excavating so that they can actually put the tracks in. So that's where the majority of the work is. So it's going to be down low. And then we come up at as quickly as we can, 2-to-1 slope. And at the top of that slope, we put the noise retention wall in. Does that make sense?
So it's going to be right up against the tracks or close
Correct.
to it.
Right at the
as close to the alignment as you possibly can get it.
Okay.
And only on the east side.
And
Yes.
only, yeah, I understand then. Okay, so then, and that's going to go as far as where did you say
It goes approximately to here. And the reason why is because we then have the embankment for the grade, so that multi-use pathway has to come up at 5%. I'm going to do something I very rarely do. Let's just skip through this. Give me 2 seconds. There. So you can see the noise attenuation wall. You can see how we have that pathway that climbs at 5% to meet the the Disabilities Act. So the bridge is up here and it slopes down. So the wall of the grading of the bridge and the noise attenuation wall kind of meet and match at close to the bridge.
So that's the top of the pedestrian bridge there.
Yes, yeah.
And if you go back one slide, it'll just give you the indication of where that image is taken from. So where B is.
B.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so all those lines between C and D, are those all rail lines?
Those are elevation lines.
Those
Elevation lines, okay.
So,
All right.
so basically we have to come down at 5%. And that's to meet the Ontario and city standards. So all you see there are those the contour grade lines as the grade drops down to follow the line of the pathway.
And the reason is that bridge comes over the alignment, and so it does end at the end of the alignment, and therefore we need to bring it down at a slow grade. So that's why the earth is required.
Okay. And it looked like in the previous picture where you had the colorings as well, the yellow area seemed to be getting up close to where the houses were.
The last two houses on Rosewood.
Yeah.
They're coming close, but they do not touch the backyard. So we carefully consider.
But this is just modeling, right?
This is modeling.
Yeah. So I'm just what's the range? What's the range of error in the modeling then? Like,
Well, that's an Alan question. So
Yeah.
that's why we're having a discussion as opposed to a presentation. So perhaps Alan could respond to that one slightly as to what the range is.
Yeah, actually, before I answer that specifically, it's worth pointing out that the mapping that we see here is representing the noise that's generated by the project. So it's just the rail noise. What you don't see here is the ambient noise from other sources like the road traffic along Carling. So that's one reason why we've kind of limited the range on the figure here down to 60 dBA, because typically beyond that, much lower than that, it's not really representing the reality that we do have that other noise source of road traffic noise from Carling and the other roads in the area. So although it appears like we're getting down to 60 at that sort of edge of the boundary, it's just kind of important to bear in mind that's just the LRT noise that we're talking about. And without the LRT, we do still have background noise from other sources.
Alan, could you also speak to the fact that it's a 16-hour LEQ and what that means?
Yeah, that's a good
Thank
point.
you.
So the assessment that's done follows the city noise guideline. For transportation assessment, the guideline takes its cue from standard provincial guidelines. So similar to MTO and other transit agencies, the assessment looks at changes in noise levels based on the 16-hour average level. So although individual LRT train pass-bys will have a higher noise during the pass-by, we're presenting the average over the course of the daytime period. And that's the same approach that's used throughout the province, because there have been studies indicating that's a good measure of how people respond to changes in noise levels from this type of project.
It's just important that you all, when you see this map, understand that the train pass by won't be, for example, 60 dBA, perhaps where it's heard, where it's yellow. It could be louder because it won't be averaged. It'll be the pass by. Sorry,
Right,
please
but it
go ahead,
won't be,
Alan.
could be, it will be, right? And to, sorry, I forget your name, Alan's point, that if once we include all the other ambient noises, like we're potentially looking at peak noise levels of around, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 100 dB.
Peak noise levels probably wouldn't be that loud. Peak
With
levels
with ambient?
yeah, even with ambient, we wouldn't expect the peak levels to be around 100. They shouldn't be that loud.
Okay, but even slightly less, it's still quite loud, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, it is all relative. the sound of an individual LRT passing by might be pretty similar, same ballpark as a bus passing by.
I'm being told that one of the studies indicated that the LA max would be 80 dBA.
Yeah, that's probably about right for this kind of setback.
Sorry, I don't think you, no, I don't think you answered the range of error in the modeling.
Yeah,
though.
I
Like,
didn't.
Because it's so
I interrupted.
close, I'm wondering,
Sorry.
like, is it acceptable, or should it even be acceptable that we limit the sound to just the edge of the area when all we're talking about is modeling and not actuals, as well as, and we're talking about 16-hour averages, not peaks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, so although we show here that the contours here, the modeling itself that's used to determine the extent of the mitigation does look at specific points of reception. I don't have a specific number for you in terms of the range of or the potential margin in the modeling. What I can say is, although we are talking about modeling, the prediction model is a well-established model that's used out. It's actually used pretty well broadly globally. The city has required that the project assessment use a US Federal Transit Administration prediction model that's more advanced than the standard provincial guidelines typically require. That model is semi-empirical, so it is based on measurements that have been undertaken of similar transit systems. In addition, as well as the report that's been prepared by the project design team, the city has commissioned an independent study from another acoustical consultant who has prepared a similar model. They've adjusted their model based on lessons learned in stage 1. So we have incorporated measurement data to review the influence of that. So that provides us with some confidence about the noise levels that are being predicted here.
I do see that John has his hand up as well. If you want to ask your question, John.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding the slope and the return to grade as it's coming underneath Carling and out into the area behind Rosewood. At one point, early on in discussion about 2.5 years ago with folks, Damon, from the other office that was in the city, they said that as it was passing by our house, which is the first one to the right of the path from Woodruff, that it would be approximately, about 1 meter above grade as it passed here. And that is fairly obvious. We're not going to see the entire train as it coming up out of the guideway. Whereabouts does it end up fully above grade on this map?
It doesn't end up above. With the noise attenuation wall, we tried showing a train. And again, I'm just going to
without the noise attenuation wall, please. Just where does the train itself end up above grade? I mean, the noise attenuation wall, I'm happy to hear that it's going to be there, because for a long time we've heard that there wasn't going to be anything. So it was going to be, where is it as it's coming up above grade? So that's what I'd like to find out, as to where, just visually, and where would it come up, please?
Somewhere around here. We'd have to go take that away and provide you a more comprehensive answer because it comes underneath the New Woodruff Bridge. And then this is what is fondly called the split as things are either moving towards baseline or bayshore. We'd have to take a closer look at exactly
It's,
where
it's already gone up onto the flyway at that point. It started to go up.
it's going to the flyway somewhere in this
Yeah,
location.
so I mean, it's all, that train is already above grade. It's, above
So-
the current grade.
We'd have to check because it has to go under Woodruff Bridge, but it depends upon what you think is.
So what we'll do is this will
Yeah,
be
we'll have to-
something, Rashid is looking at the cross sections, John. It's
Oh,
not something
perfect.
we have on hand at the moment. We will
Okay.
have this
Thank you.
answer for you towards the end. I hope that's okay. Stefan, you had your hand up next.
Yes, hi. Just back to the noise concern. I guess there's two things. We did talk about average versus peak, and we don't have numbers of what peak could be. I'm just thinking, to be fair, there has been the train running for maybe 2 years now. So did you guys collect data to see, here's what the noise level was in this neighborhood, here's what it is now? Has it impacted? Because it's not new, it's just going to be new here. So I wonder if that data is available. And the other thing is kind of the same idea. What is the current ambient noise average and peak right now? Because if you tell me 60, great, but I couldn't tell you what it is right now. Is it going to be worse? For me personally, if it's the same that we expected, this is what it was. And, we do hear the buses and that's fine. If it's no worse, then I'm happy with that, So do we have that information?
Just while they look for that, Stefan, a few points. The buses currently operate, our diesel buses, this electric train system. They both do have HVAC systems, which tend to be part of the noisier elements of both running vehicles. But the train will have the noise while separating your home from the alignment, which the Transitway currently doesn't. And I'm not sure if our team will be able to pull together. You guys are asking wonderful questions. What I'm not sure is if we have this information readily available to answer the questions in this call. I do believe towards the end we'll be able to source it and get it for you, but I don't want to hold up the whole conversation for it. So if one of my team is able to answer the remaining of that question.
I can
offhand?
answer one of the questions anyway.
Thank you, Alan.
We do have there has been measurements undertaken in some areas around, and existing levels have also been predicted. We're talking about levels in the high 50s right now in that area, average.
That's great. Thank you, Alan. And Rashid, off the top of your head, the work we did over at 215 Parkdale, volume of operating train, is that something you have handy, or should we wait on that?
Sorry, the question was a number. I apologize. I was trying to gather the
Cross section.
the cross sections, being productive.
Fast
Can I
and
ask you-
furious, Rashid.
Apologize.
Just
Can you
what
ask-
is what is the train that's operating now? What is its average DBA and proximity to kind of thing? And I
That's a
just
good.
feel
Yeah,
like we did those studies at 215.
215 Parkdale was more about looking at what it was before the LRT system was there afterwards. And actually, in regards to 215 Parkdale, the LEQ was lower than before. But we ended up addressing the LA Max, which was another thing. So I don't have the data off the top of my head, but we can
That's
certainly
okay.
gather that information.
But the other thing that's worth noting for most of the questions that have been asked is that while we do have modeling undertaken to identify what mitigation would fit for this area, the project as a whole will continue to monitor noise in operation. So what we're saying is we acknowledge there's an issue and we're going to do something to mitigate that. That doesn't mean that we're going to wash our hands and go away. Well, like this team will, but there will be a team that is monitoring this as the system's in operation, just like we did at 215 Parkdale. That was reactive. This is proactive. If it turns out that there are more measures required, then that is something that has been proven can and will occur. Sarah, you've been patiently with your hands up for a while now.
Okay, so I wanted to note Paula's question. It was earlier on in the chat. She was asking if we can find out what company it was that actually did the study, whether the independent or the one that the city did. I'm not sure if those were two different, but whichever the two different studies were. I also wanted to know if we're actually going to get to see the study or if we have to just simply go on everyone's good faith of what is actually in that study. And my third question was, in terms of the split structure, why have we not looked at walling that area around Woodruff High School?
Okay, that's a good question. About the split structure, the bridge is built, and therefore you can't put a wall on a built bridge. It wouldn't be able to manage the wind, the weight, and the whatnot. That's the sort of thing that has to be done before construction, which is why there's no walls on the split structure. But we've also met with Woodruff High School, and we can see that while 60 dBA does touch upon the auditorium, it doesn't affect that. And then just a little bit of inside baseball. What the provincial and municipal guidelines and regulations do is they indicate that we are required to ensure that your outdoor amenity space, i.e. your backyards, are what those measures are taken for. Since a school has no outside amenity space and it's nobody's home, there is no obligation or requirement for the city to mitigate Woodruff High School. There is a requirement for Woodruff High School or the board to mitigate if there were issues with that. So they would need to look at changing their windows or whatnot. And so that's a meeting we had last week with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board.
Sorry, Sarah, could I ask a question? Why are
Go ahead.
I'm trying to phrase it. You had asked for the name of the firm that did the noise study. Are you looking for the firm that the contractor hired, or are you looking for the third-party reviewer? Which one are you looking for?
Both would be great.
Okay, so I'm not sure, Damon, whether we can do that, but we have provided not the whole noise attenuation study, but the relevant parts for the community. So we have been trying to address the community's concerns and giving the pieces that are relevant to you.
As I mentioned, the report is for
Yeah.
the entire alignment and
Exactly.
therefore has way more stuff that isn't prevalent for this area than is. So what we have done and what we could do is we could extract the information relevant to your neighborhood and share that, of course, Sarah.
Damon's doing a much better job of explaining it than me tonight.
And the third party group that the city hired is SLR. The same group that helped us with the noise modeling and noise remediation at 215 Parkdale.
Okay.
I think they might have bought Novus, but now I'm getting into the weeds.
Correct.
So unless Woodruff High School buys new windows, there is no obligation from the LRT to do anything to mitigate the space that is essentially community space owned by the OCDSB and operated by them, to make that a better outdoor space for the community, is what you guys are saying.
That is the provincial and municipal standard and regulation, yes. And that, again, is 60 dBA. That is.
But if you're having an outdoor classroom because you're trying to be COVID safe, or if you're having a track meet out on their back track, that makes it very difficult to be able to do those things without it becoming a huge screaming match or whatever it happens to be. That's all I'm saying.
Those are good points.
And I know the OCDSB isn't really concerned about, 1,000 kids at one school in their whole district, but we are.
Of course, yeah, a parent. I appreciate the points you're making, and the challenge is we're building this project in the city of Ottawa and the province of Ontario, and the standards that govern our project are what we're building and going to operate by. and I do appreciate, and this isn't the first time that we've heard concerns about the way in which the standards are built or the way in which the policies are. And I'm not disagreeing with those comments, Sarah, but what I'm saying is we're implementing what we're required to implement. The conversations you want to have are at a different level than mid-level bureaucrats.
I
I'm
would
not
love
trying
to.
to, I'm not trying to like dish it off there by any means, but I don't make decisions.
No, and I totally appreciate that. And you and I have talked about this at length on lots of different things.
Mhm.
I would love to see the LRT do better than is what required. That is all.
That's
Because
a fair point.
this is our home.
That's a great point. And the LRT is doing more than required in a lot of areas. And where it is possible to do more, we are doing more. That is the case. But what I'd like to do is, I don't feel like I have gonna provide any more like substantial answers. And I would like to see Martha continue on. But that being said, Sarah, I'm not trying to shut that bit down. I think we can continue this as this progresses, if that's okay. Thank you. Martha?
Yeah, I'm just checking to
Oh,
make
sorry.
sure. No, I'm checking to make sure there's no other hands. Have we kind of addressed
We've
to
addressed
that
all
of our
current questions.
current? Okay, perfect. Okay, so then we come to what's happening. What is this going to look like when the construction is done? And what we're showing here is everything we've talked about so far. We have the noise attenuation wall along the edge of the alignment. We have the multi-use pathway coming and wrapping up so it meets the Woodruff pedestrian bridge. We have the pedestrian activated crosswalk crosswide for the cyclists to connect to the overall network. And we have the connection into Woodruff High School. One of the things that should be noted is, and you're all familiar with it, this is the highest point of land of the road, and then the road starts to drop down to the high school. So when we looked at the preliminary design, we wanted to find the spot where we could make the best connection between the bridge and the school. And the more we push this pathway down, the worse the connection was because of the grade of the way the roadway worked. We do have several images. This is from the bridge looking down, and we've shown where the fences are. It's a long view where we have the view from Woodruff High School. You can start seeing where the fence is or the wall is. One thing to note as we look through these, you can see where the pedestrian is or the cyclist is. This is kind of static to a certain extent. So where you see a cyclist here, when you see them in the next image from A, the cyclist is still there. You can see where the pedestrians are. You can see the height of the fence. So for someone who's on the multi-use pathway, they would not be able to see in your rear yards. There is the view from the top of the bridge. What is that long view down where you can see into the second floor, but the rear yard views and the outdoor living spaces, the multi-use pathway is down as low as it possibly can go and is below the height of your fence. So you see those views, and C is another one where you get an idea.
Sorry, Martha, just gonna cut you off real quick. I apologize. The Real MC.
No.
Sorry, if you have a name you'd prefer me to call you by, post to the Real MC. I do,
Mark.
I do like it.
Yeah, the Real MC is fine as well.
It's really like, what side? I love it. Yeah.
So I just want to challenge what you're saying a little bit in terms of the height, because look, here's the picture from my house in the back, and that's clearly able to see over the fence.
That's a 6-foot fence.
You can see the picture, and we were in your backyard, and thank you very much. And the photographs that we took were from that photograph, if I'm not mistaken, is from your deck, which is actually at almost the second level, because your house is a split level.
Yep.
So when you're in your rear yard, which is where we look at the outdoor living space, when you're on the ground in your rear yard, people can't see you. I'm not disagreeing that when you're on your deck on which becomes your second floor in your backyard, because of that grade difference, you can see the activity going on. But when you're actually in your rear yard, using your rear yard, the height of the fence and the grade difference, we modeled it, and some of the photographs that I took after we modeled, we compared the modeling back and forth, and it's a relatively, this is all using 3D modeling, real. I can't. It is accurate, and you would see. And there's the second floor. There's your first floor, but because of the split, it's actually your second floor at the back of the yard. So people can't see into your rear yard. And if they're looking up, they'll look up at they'll look up towards your deck, and you look down from your deck onto this area. There's.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I mean, of course, it's a 6-foot fence. So to look down into the yard, you'd have to clearly be way above it, but they're
Correct.
actually able to see into our space if there's kind of anything above the fence line.
And there's unless there's an incredibly tall person, well over 6 feet tall, and they would look over, but the fence would foreshorten their views, and it would still provide that screening in the on the ground. The area, I think, of your concern, and really there's limited opportunity for us to do anything about it, is off of your deck because of the way your rear yard slopes from the front of your house back to the back. You can see this pathway here. The pathway comes in and we can't lower the pathway because of the 5% slope we need on the pathway coming off the bridge. We're setting the height of the bridge so that it has the appropriate clearances underneath, or the appropriate clearances for the track and the electrical line and all the works of the alignment. So we were within inches whenever we looked at this design starting in 2015. Everything was looked at to see how we can push this down as far as we can, but we also have the split. We also have Pinecrest Creek we have to come over. We have the multi-use pathway on the west side of Pinecrest Creek. So there's this very fine dance that happened between all of these elements of alignment, connectivity, rear yards, Carling Avenue, and trying to get everything to fit within a very tight corridor. I don't think we didn't have much flexibility in that space, but from the multi-use pathway perspective, the fence in your rear yard will screen your activities. People can't look in, and you are protected from the grassy area. Yes. From the deck, I do agree that you look down onto this multi-use pathway.
But it's not just the deck, like they're looking right into our house. Some of them are waving.
Oh, don't like that.
They're waving at you?
Yeah, they're waving. Like they see us in the window and they wave.
Oh,
okay.
Like a passing boat. I don't like that.
Well, especially when we had so much privacy before, right? And you would have thought that the design would have included some sort of privacy for the homeowners. There's not that many homes along this stretch. And to build the pathway so close where we have kids that are going to be walking, there'll be more graffiti on the fences that we're going to have to worry about. I mean, the LRT bridge already has graffiti on it and it's less than a year old and not even completed yet. So how are we supposed to maintain our privacy? And also, you know, we have concerns. There's a lot of pool owners along this corridor. We don't want to end up with uninvited children or guests coming into the backyard, sneaking dips. So how do we protect ourselves as homeowners against that?
There's a couple of things. I know this is not meant to sound insensitive. I've got a hot tub in my backyard. I need a locked gate. The pool bylaw within the city of Ottawa mandates that you must have locked gate. If there's a gate, it must be locked from the inside so that there is no unauthorized users that are entering in. We have a real grading challenge to come down off of the bridge, come around, and then bring it back. So we've tried to balance that to the best of our ability. We are looking at, and this is part of a conversation when we have the opportunity to do some additional tree planting, and it's a bit of a question because one of the other things that we balance with that is there's limited amount of space in this area between your house and the pathway, but there's also the individual, like people like those pastoral views looking out over the whole corridor. If we do too heavy of a wall of trees, then you lose your view. The other thing that ends up happening is we don't want to have too many conifers, too many spruce trees in a heavy line, because we're also concerned about septet. We want to make this feel that it's a safe corridor to walk along. I don't have an answer for you about why the construction workers are waving at you. I don't.
Well, I'm not saying it's just a construction, like
It's the
student,
kids.
all the students,
It's the kids.
like it's a not, 2-3 times a day, we've got tons and tons of students walking by and they're not shy.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. We can look at adding a few trees along there to help kind of give you some more privacy, especially if there's like deciduous trees. If that would be of benefit, we can definitely take that away and take a closer look at that.
So I'll just say a yes, please to that one.
Okay.
I want you to know, the real MC, that Martha and I have had a conversation about that. The landowner is the NCC, and we had been hopeful we could do something sooner, and we were unsuccessful. But I just want you guys to know that just because we're not always being able to say yes to everything doesn't mean that we haven't discussed it in the back and we haven't advocated. But unfortunately, we're not always successful with everything we try and do also. I will say, sorry, Martha, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Sorry. To that point, though, the NCC is been an active partner with the city on this development. We have broached the idea of doing some additional tree planting in this area, to assist in some of those screenings, and they are agreeable to that. We lose, or we don't have the ability to force the contractor to do it at any particular time. We are doing some tree planting with the NCC in the spring of 2022, but it's being focused on a different part of the alignment. And we were trying to see whether or not there was any ability to move things around, but because of a whole series of, there's a significant number of rational reasons why this just isn't feasible at this particular time. But it is an area that have discussed, as Damon said, and the NCC has said yes, we need to develop a plan for that area, and then we'll move forward. And I'm just not sure when that would happen. It may not happen for a couple of years. Landscaping, as everybody knows, is always the last thing to happen. And we're too far down the pipe right now, too far away from 2024, 2025 to understand. And Kev doesn't know how they're doing it either. Obviously, they're not going to do all the landscaping at the exact same time. And as areas come available, they will be looking to finalize some work. I just don't know where this sits in the overall construction schedule.
Yeah, no, I understand. I want to give John here a chance to jump in, but
Okay.
I will just say, because you mentioned maybe a couple of years from now, the bridge is expected to be finished next year with the other bridge coming down, which means the pathway will have been completed, which means construction right up against our area will have been done. So I don't see why it should wait that long, but I'll just leave you with that because I want to pass it on to John here.
Yep.
Thanks, Mark. Martha, I'm going to challenge the statement that you made about the pathway being below sort of the property lines and the levels at this point, and people would not be able to see in. The path as it's currently paved behind our house, again, and even our neighbors. So from where the point A is over to the left of your diagram that you have on the screen, I can fully see everybody walking along the path right down to their feet. And the fact it's up above the current back side of my lot. So the path is actually higher at this point than the grade at the fence of my lot. I have a hedge all the way along there. Right behind the house, it's about a 20-foot hedge, but because it is an old hedge, there are gaps all through it. So I see, people are not below the level of the fence at this point.
So-
right now, if I'm at 6 feet tall, which I am at this point about this high over top of my fence, which is, it's not going to be simply just putting a 6 foot fence, something that's 6 feet along there if I wanted to hide everything from the house. So I'm just going to challenge that the grade is not as low when you go from A over to Carling as you think it is.
Oh, that would be, John, a really good takeaway. We'll look at it. My understanding is that path was supposed to be built plus or minus at existing grade. We have still some leeway with the contractor because that was what they were supposed to have done. So I have to take a closer look at the drawings and see where we sit on that, and we'll have to get back to you on it.
Grade has changed because they've been dumping and scraping and dumping and scraping and dumping and scraping. We had a frozen pond out there last winter.
Okay.
And then we had the ski hill for most of the summer. So grade no longer exists from what it was. So
But-
if they're just going currently with the contours, and it is not at the where the grade was. So,
but we have the existing topography and grades from before they started.
That's fine.
So we'll go back to the original and see where they're supposed to be at. The reason why I've got a bit of confused look on my face is because Rosewood has that existing pathway connection through there. And that will be maintained and protected. And actually we're widening it slightly. So the confusion comes that they have to meet and match the pathway at this location. So, and we have to have a 5% path. So I just need to look at it.
Yeah, no, there is a right about where your camera A is. There is a swale in the topography right there, a natural swale that goes down. So where Sarah lives, closer to the end over near B, it's higher. Okay, and it does come down towards A, and then it comes back up again towards Carling. And so at the moment, it is there is still a bit of a swale in the
Right here.
path that's there. Yes.
Yeah.
And so and just saying that as it gets behind that last house, I'm lucky I have both paths. On the sides of the house, on two sides of the house. So okay, I get lots of people. The short one from Rosewood is really a smoking zone for the students. And I'm not necessarily talking about your menthol tipped cigarettes.
Fair.
And so we have a running conversation with the principal about getting students. It's like, well, cannabis is legal. Yeah, but not if you're in high school. Yeah, you're not of age. Sorry.
Correct. Yeah.
Guys, come on, get off that horse. But so it just, Stefan is on the other side, to the house to the left of the Rosewood to Carling path. So, we've had, we still have a bit of construction, and going back to that particular piece where that path comes out to Rosewood, the reason that they repaved it last year on Rosewood, there was a water, a hydrant that they tapped into for a temporary main. And then they tore up all of that path and repaved it to cover off this temporary main. At the community meeting about 2 months ago, we raised that the construction is still not finished there. It was still a piece. They came, they filled in the hole, but they haven't paved it, and there's still some stuff on that corner. So
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand something. There is a piece of that pathway from Rosewood to Carling that is still not paved? And
No, it's paved, but there was a temporary water main that was put under there last year. We were told that it was going to be ripped up and redone. So the question is, if it's going to happen, okay, when is it going to be part of this? The pathway is only so wide. I lost half the roots of a cedar hedge that's on my property up to the fence when they carved out the new pathway, but it's not all the way paved side to side at this point.
It's supposed to be, they're not supposed to leave an unpaved section of pathway for any more than 5 working days.
It's paved, it's all paved. It's just that they excavated and scraped out.
So they haven't finished the sides.
They haven't finished the sides and they haven't done that part. So, and part of the question was, is that, are they going to come back and what are they going to do about the temporary water main? Are they going to rip it up again? Or are they just going to cap it at the hydrant and leave that there in case they need it again?
Damon's writing, so he's going to find an answer.
Yeah.
To that question
and
later.
I did send a note off to Councillor Kavanaugh. I mentioned that earlier today in an email I sent across at that point. But there's stuff that gets started and gets half done by the crew along there, and it's just like it's a little bit frustrating when it's all part of Kev. The other part is that just where the Y happens, there is a hydro pole that's at about a 10% lean. I call it the pole of Pisa. It has a retention cable that is pulled out towards and into the path that they just paved. The guys were looking at it before they paved it, saying, "What do we do? Do we pave around it? Do we pave it in? What do we do?" So hydro's, from what I understand, Damon, from an earlier email, that hydro is supposed to be coming in August and September, just passed, to start doing some hydro work along there about the lines and that pole. And that we've seen nothing or heard nothing from hydro on that either. And so there's another set of construction that's associated that we're not hearing about, and we're not having to understand what's going on.
With respect to the hydro pole, related to the lien, they do have an issue. A design issue they're trying to resolve. They need to put a secondary pole to support, and they're looking for a location that doesn't impact a sidewalk, Carling Avenue, a private driveway. And so that is something that HOL and Kev are currently looking at a design for. And I just happened to be invited into that meeting.
Bury it. Put it underground.
Okay. I've taken some notes though, John, and I'll look into that. And of course, you're always welcome to write to Councillor Kavanaugh, and she's a huge advocate for Whitehaven. But if you need an LRT question answered, my email address is always a good one to start with.
And we forwarded it to you, so you got it.
Please go ahead, Martha.
Okay, so we'll definitely look at the grading in this area between camera A and the connection and see what we started off with and what is proposed, and see if we can give you an answer. Oops, sorry. So we hadn't done any perspectives that far north. We were really focusing around the bridge that dropped down to the existing grade and how this corridor would look like, but we'll definitely take a closer look at that area and give you a response back. And then the opportunity for some additional tree planting along here does exist if there's concurrence from, and this could be at one of the last slides, we have we're asking you for some input. Every individual homeowner can let us know if that is something that they would be interested in or not. And we can definitely take a look at that in as we move forward through the final landscape plans. Last question that we have, and more community input that we're looking for. We talked about the fact that there will be a noise attenuation wall along the east side of the alignment. And the question is, what does that noise attenuation wall look like? We're asking you specifically because you will be looking at this. So we're asking for the landowners who will in the future see this as the backdrop to their view and through through the limits of what's going on. It could be textured. It could be beige. So we have some straightforward questions. Do you prefer the straight panels? Do you prefer something that's textured that looks like the rock? Do you prefer gray? Do you prefer beige? And then the other one, do you prefer something that has vines on it so that it has more of a green edge to the view shed as opposed to something that may be like a stone wall appearance? So we are really looking for that. One of my personal reasons I like the vines, it softens it. It doesn't make it look as engineered of an element. It also does a really good job of deterring any sort of graffiti, because when the vines are there and the vines are growing, the people who do the graffiti, the vines cover them up. The city will be doing we'll be looking at anti-graffiti. They do the maintenance, but this is another way of helping kind of provide that kind of green corridor. So we're also looking to see whether or not you're interested from an individual community perspective of seeing the vines to assist in some of that screening and making it look more green. So I'm going to pass this back over now to Damon, because he's much more in tune with what's been happening with the construction schedule. But so I'm going to pass this.
Thank you, Martha. So as we did allude to at the beginning of this presentation, so the Woodruff pedestrian bridge, finishing touches we've made on that. We will.
Sorry, Damon, can I interrupt you? Paula just has
Please.
her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see a hand up.
Not an actual real hand.
Oh, I don't see it on screen. My apologies. Please go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't realize there was a hand up button.
That's okay, Paula. That I just didn't see the screen. I would have interjected otherwise. Please go ahead.
I wanted to go back to the noise mitigation. You've done the study and you've got all the lovely colors showing the different decibels. And we briefly touched on your choices of noise mitigation, which were the wall, the dampening, and then there was a third one. And then we got on to something else.
Bear with me for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
This one.
Go back one more. It had the three. Yeah, that was an acoustic wall.
Yeah.
Rail
dampers and noise walls.
And then if we put that to the review that we had done by, it was a professor in the States.
John.
He had some concerns that I didn't hear addressed. The fact that we've got multiple train lines coming through, we have the most in the entire LRT that's planned. We've got multiple changeovers, they called them. Switches, and plus something else. There were two different things going on there within our system, because we know there's some crossovers where trains are able to change walks. Yes, that's because correct. We have 4 lines, I think, plus a 5th one happening maybe. 3. And then we also have that curve, and that's going to be a maintenance issue for keeping the rail nice and clean. So can we get all 3 of these? Could that be possible?
Alan will probably speak. Yeah, Alan's going to be the best person. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to touch on the elements of the track that you mentioned there first. Just to reassure you that the modeling does account for the factors of the crossovers. So there is an adjustment that's applied to the model. We know that as the trains pass over those discontinuities where there's the switches, there's slightly elevated noise. So that's an adjustment that's applied to the model. It's accounted for in the results. The other elements, the volume of the trains and the number of lines, are also directly input into the model, and the presence of the curve where there is a potential for higher noise levels as the trains are moving around those. That's also factored into the model. But both the original model from the design team and the independent verification, which also considered those effects as they appeared on stage 1. Then onto the mitigation elements that we've looked at. Out of these 3 options here, the noise walls really are the best option.
And probably the least expensive. If you look at a build, the other one's got
maybe not actually. Like the wall panels are cheaper than the noise walls themselves because they don't have an inherent structural element to them. They're an absorptive finish that's applied to a retaining wall. In this case, the noise walls that we're looking at do have absorption built in. So the side facing the rail corridor will have that acoustical absorption property to it. So that's one benefit of the noise walls, is they're providing both that screening to block the noise of the trains. They're also absorbing the noise that hits them.
Is it too late to have the acoustical wall panels put on also, only because we have so many rail lines going through there?
Well, the addition of wall panels to the retaining wall below the noise walls will really provide very limited additional benefit. Because the majority of the noise is going to be kind of radiating out, and with the noise walls in place, that there's most of the noise is going to be hitting the noise wall and then traveling in the opposite direction, or it will be absorbed by the noise wall. And
where are the switches within the lower area? Are the switches all above grade?
So that was a question that was asked. Rashid has pulled out a cross section. So when we're done sharing the presentation, Paula, I do have a copy of a map that shows where the switches are, and Rashid's going to walk us through it, if that's okay, just because this is what's being shared right now.
That'd be great.
My background was I was a project manager with our WDI. We did noise studies, we did sound studies, we did wind studies, we did sand reentrainment studies on a train track through the desert. So my thought is throw as much as you can and don't worry about the cost, because I don't want to hear this train.
So you will hear the train.
Yes.
Like even after we're talking about, it's not going to be silent, just like you hear the buses. Yeah.
I don't want to hear it over the noise of the Queensway. We hear the Queensway when they're sitting in our backyard. So that's what, 55, 60 decibels is what's allowed by city.
So you'll hear this train.
We don't, because we currently don't hear the buses going by.
If the highway is 60 dBA in your backyard, then likely you'll hear the pass-bys. Yes, I'm trying to be honest with you and not trying to just pretend.
Well, that's exactly what I want to hear, because
perfect. But that's not the answer you wanted, though, and I'm sorry about that.
Okay. Sorry, Alan, you can continue.
No worries. So the additional of more absorption is really, I'd say, less than marginal improvement that you'd expect from that. It's probably not a noticeable additional benefit.
Could it be added? If there are switches, could we have the acoustic wall panels put in?
Sorry, say that again.
If the switches end up being within this section that's below grade, could we have them added just at the switch areas? Or if all of the switches are above grade, that's a different beast. We'll be looking at noise walls. But if some of the switches end up being below grade, throwing up a series of acoustic wall panels into it would definitely help, even if it's only 2 or 3 decibels, because as we know, it's a wave that's going to grow.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, it is possible to retrofit this type of panel. So it's potentially something that could be explored. But I do expect, after we already have the noise walls, the additional benefit, it's probably 2 or less than 2. And at that point,
How high is this noise wall that you're considering? 6, 8, 10?
I think the final height hasn't been determined.
Okay.
The height that was identified by EWC in their noise study was 4.5 meters.
Okay, that's decent.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
The final mitigation there, the rail dampers, they're effective on straight track. They can't easily be applied in locations where there are switches. So unfortunately, that's one reason why they haven't been earmarked for implementation in this area.
I see that Sarah had her hand up
Sarah? Yeah.
and then it disappeared.
Paula asked my question that she saw in the chat, maybe.
Oh,
And
okay.
there wasn't a definitive answer of height. I'm just wondering, because the train is so much lower than all of our properties, and the fact that we do have this split level and our second stories are existing on a 3rd story level for intensive purposes coming to the rail line, how much it's actually going to help at that level in terms of living space and things like that. And I know that the thing said that there wasn't going to be any impact in terms of decibels and stuff, but we all know that's baloney, and we're just all trying to get a good sense of how it's going to affect our day-to-day living. So I just was wondering the height in relation to how low the train is compared to all of our homes. But you may not have that answer, as Alan
So
said.
yeah, he said that's what they modeled it at as 4.5, and I think it's going to depend on the grade of the train versus the height of the fence, because the actual retaining wall below grade will act as the wall in that place. When that information is available, Sarah, we will share that with you. With respect to the point about living space, the way that it is measured is for outdoor spaces. But if you were talking about, if I could throw a few modeled numbers out there from second floor with LEQ, 61 to 63 dBA. And if we were talking about pass-bys, you wanted that information, Sarah, you're looking at an average between 74 and 78 on your upper floors. And that's without mitigation, and we are proposing mitigations that would offset those values. I think my computer's slowing down and you may not hear me anymore.
Oh, no, I heard you. It's John's turn.
Yeah. So my question
Sorry.
on mitigation is around the braking going into the station. What in terms of the map and the alignment that is coming through, at what point are the brakes being applied to the train to slow it down? At what point will that noise increase as it gets closer to the Lincoln Field station coming from, say, the south at that point in time? Pass-bys are one thing. As they start to break, metal on metal is not the, brake pads, etc. on brakes, on tracks, there is still going to be noise at that point. So the question that I had is, relating more to the acoustic panels into the final parts of the guideway into the station, whether that's going to be there to assist, because that's going to be an additional set of metrics that we're going to see as well, not just the pass-bys.
Rashid, you once taught me about how quick a train gets to velocity and reduces its velocity compared to, say, a bus or whatnot. I don't suppose you'd be able to make that in relation to a train that's traveling northbound towards Lincoln Field Station?
Yeah, I think, John, is your question more generally based on your experience from VIA, or are you speaking from? I'm asking because I generally don't know. Is it more so that you've heard that the
So
LRT trains make noise?
I
break.
in London, England, I lived along some of the overhead rail lines, and again along the transit lines on the service routes in the UK. I've lived in Toronto, close to where the subways and the trains have gone, and I've yet to see anything with rubber wheels and rubber brake pads that eliminate the noise of braking. Heck, even my car these days, coming out of the driveway, has noise from the brakes at that point. So, Martha, can you pull up the map that had the with the attenuation grid at this point?
Give me just
So
right there, that one.
in this particular map, with the station to the left edge of the screen, the trains are going to be starting to brake at about the point, applying heavier brakes at the point of about the A camera in terms of coming down vertically from that point to the tracks. They're going to have to slow down at that point because they're coming, some of them are coming down off the incline and they're going to have to be coming down. So they're either going to start braking above grade, above the wall, and that's going to fly directly towards the houses more so than it would as it starts to come down into the guideway as it goes towards Carling. But if they're, so the modeling that you have around here, again, let's go maybe back to Alan and others, but is it incorporating the braking zone into that modeling, or is it only on pass by?
I was actually just going to answer while Alan gives you the question to an answer to your second question. The first question was, I think, will the LRT braking, will it cause excessive noise?
Or will it start before Carling Avenue, for example, to mitigate the speed going down the hill?
Yeah, I just want to, if you're next to the Via Rail station and you see the train go by, it's a different type of train, right? We're talking about locomotive, has a air brake system. The way that air brakes are applied to the wagons are really different than what we have on our system. To date, I haven't, and I deal with quite a bit of, I not say quite a bit because it's numerous, but over the years, I've heard of different concerns from residents. But I have to admit, I've never heard one regarding the braking of the trains. It's something that we can kind of look into with our maintainer to determine whether it is an issue. But to this stage, the other types of noise, like the rail running noise, the from the contact, just from the contact from the wheel or the rail, or from the wheel impacts at the switches, are going to dominate the noise coming from the rail.
If you talk to anybody who works at Tunney's Pasture in the building that's right closest to the train station, okay, they will tell you that they can hear the trains braking in their offices. You can hear the braking, okay? And so it happens and it's still there. The guideway at that point is basically a reflector that's bouncing the sound up towards the office towers. So, it doesn't matter whether you've got, unless you have something that is a Formula One style ceramic brake that's going to stop a car going 100 miles an hour to 0 in under a second, you're going to have some form of braking noise and deceleration that's going to happen between the brakes and the wheels. So the question is,
and I'm not saying there isn't, John. I'm saying that the type of noise coming from the wheel and rail interaction, let's say, or just from operating the trains, there's the wheel and rail interaction itself, and the wheel impacts are going to dominate the type of noise. So those are usually the type of noise that we've addressed. In your case, if you're saying a train comes to a complete stop, and the noise that's generated at that locate. Like you're speaking for a train coming to a complete stop, correct?
Well, the train going into the station doesn't go into the station at maximum velocity. It slows down. Something is slowing it down as it approaches the station. So it is going to be under braking from the overpass of D through to A, and then slowing down to a stop inside Carling, because it's not going to be a flyby train through the Lincoln Field station. So there is going to be some form of braking noise that is going to happen in addition to switches, in addition to wheels on rails. There's going to be an additional noise component that's in there. So has the modeling taken that into play? Because it's going to get louder and going to be more forceful in terms of energy that's being applied to the brakes as you're getting closer to the station.
Yeah, the train's braking capability is 1.3 meters per second squared. That is a very tight braking. It's not going to brake anywhere near your property. So that's my understanding.
If they're not braking anywhere near my property, I'm afraid for the people in the station. I'm the last house on Rosewood before they hit the station. That is that's less than 100 meters to hit Carling. Okay, so I say that's still, if there's any ice on the rails, if there's anything along those lines, you're going to look at, somebody going at that speed is going to be in a situation where you may have to back up into the, back up to get back to the stand. I'm not quite a believer in the fact there's going to be no braking at all going through.
Don't need to be sorry, John. We'll look into it. Again, Alan can correct me here, but I don't think the model has looked at that type of scenario, because consider that we're modeling a train at the maximum speed that we expect the train to travel at. If the train is going to brake, the train is no longer traveling at the maximum speed. It's actually creating less noise because it's traveling slower, but it's a different type of noise that's being created. So you can't just say, let's model at 80 kilometers an hour. Let's model for the maximum braking. Let's model for a switch at exactly every single location. So like even going through the switch, we don't travel at the switch at 80 kilometers an hour. It slows down to do that, right? Because it has a limited speed. So
hopefully,
yeah. So you would know that from Via Rail. So I think to kind of give you an idea of how the model was done, it obviously didn't look at the braking pattern of the train, but the train braking itself.
It's a lovely application of calculus. This would be a great thing to get the calculus students at Woodruff High to look at some of these numbers and see if they could practice and pick up on some of those things and figure out some of the calculations in general, because it's a real world example of the rate of change. So I would like to understand whether the braking is, how it's been incorporated, what the algorithm is in terms of looking at it. And that's just from a perspective of, I really don't want the guy texting while he's driving the train and realizing he's coming into the station a little too hot and having to slam on the brakes and slide in.
It's not the operator doing it. It's completely computer generated. It's a robot.
Unless there isn't a power failure, and then that becomes a driver who has to do it. And we've never had a power outage in Ottawa, not one ever. We've had no blackouts. So, hopefully, we won't have any more.
We also have PVMSs, portable, not PVMSs, sorry, TPSSs scattered along the alignment. Therefore, they are meant to maintain power if there's a zone of outage over here and there's still power, there'd still be an ability to operate and at least get trains out of the way, still under the automated.
In a catastrophic event like the tornadoes that landed and knocked out the power in the area, that would have gone right from Queensway Terrace all the way down to Woodruff and Byron. I mean, it's like, is there enough power in the grid to be able to handle the tracks at that point? So
right, and if you'd like, we could set up we could have a meeting with our emergency management specialists and the transit control operations center. And I'm not trying to belittle your comments at all, but I'm not like this. You're talking about.
I would just like to understand if the braking has been looked at it. Acceleration, not so worried about that part, because as you say, it's not a locomotive and it's not going to be accelerating through the like a Harley coming off the line. That's great. Or some of the Ducatis that come off Carling and onto the Parkway. But the braking is more of an issue than the acceleration.
And we've made a note. We're taking that.
Thank
away.
you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, if I can just step in and say a little something about how the modeling takes place. Really just reiterating Rashid's point that the modeling itself is conservative. So we look at the design speeds of the trains through the area. We do account for the wheel rail interaction. Sarah had a comment about braking and track switching, that being significant. The track switching and the crossover noise of those discontinuities is accounted for in the model. The braking itself, all three of the available noise models that we have, the provincial rail noise model, the US FTA model, and Nord 2000. None of those assessments have specifically included an adjustment for braking noise. It's not an assumption. It's not an adjustment that's available in those models. I think generally the models are considered to be conservative. That's what we've seen based in practice and measurements. But that adjustment just is not available in the modeling that we undertake.
Excuse me, I'm just wondering if we've seen the entire presentation. I just want to make sure that everyone has.
Not quite yet. We did get hung up towards the very end.
I'm sure everybody will want to wrap up soon.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Councillor. That's a good point.
So if you want to pull that back to the construction slide, Martha, I'll tie up the very end of this presentation. We can give these wonderful people websites, a link where they can get the feedback put in.
Great questions, but I think you'll want to see all of it.
Therefore, we're at the very end here. The pedestrian bridge will open in the spring. We will decommission the existing one. The Carling Bridge Works refer to the train that goes underneath Carling Avenue. A lot of utility relocations are being done at this point in time. John, you mentioned the leaning pole of Pisa. That is related to a utility that needs to be relocated. Looking for an anchor spot for that as well. But ultimately, the roads will allow for a train to pass underneath. And in 2023, a civil works within the alignment shall be functionally completed, and that will allow for concepts of test tracks and testing of vehicles. Hopefully, I mean, we had these grander plans in stage 1 and that didn't actually play out, but I've got bigger hopes and dreams in stage 2. Next slide, please. And so we did note in this presentation that there were elements of this that we're looking for your feedback, because we acknowledge not only do you live behind the alignment, but if we're mitigating the noise of that alignment, we'd like you to have a say in what that mitigation looks like physically, from the type of wall, the color, the texture, and the planting. Yay or nay? Now, been great supporters of the project. Councillor Kavanaugh in her office. We have a Survey Monkey at the link on screen. We will share this presentation with you tomorrow, so you don't need to record that right now. It's also within Councillor Kavanaugh's bulletin. If you want to go in there, you can answer each of the questions. Yes, what you'd like, or it doesn't matter. There's also a point for comments. Martha did mention this would be an opportunity for you to weigh in about trees or vegetation between them up and your property line in that comment section. And adding your address into that list will validate your feedback, because we are weighting your feedback higher than feedback of people who don't back onto the alignment, is what I mean by that statement. Lastly, we are meeting with Rosewood, we are meeting with Edgeworth, and we're meeting with QTN Each area has a proposed wall to mitigate the noise. It is our intention to have a look, a feel for the walls that are going to be installed. Therefore, it's not going to be, well, Edgeworth wanted gray and Rosewood wanted taupe, and that's going to be the answer. What we're going to do is we're going to wait till we get the results from all of our areas, waiting the feedback from those who back onto it, and we're going to go from there. Please note that certain textures dissuade graffiti, as does the planting, and so we are seeing a heavier weight towards that as well. We will, once we have all this information, have a larger community meeting where we can update residents on the feedback, on the fallout, and or what we've been able to establish based on these meetings. And so that is how we see our next steps. And the next slide is just going to say thank you. And of course, thank you. You've given a lot of your time tonight, and I know that while the idea of getting noise mitigation is something that you've asked for a long time. And John, to your point, I never said you weren't going to get it. I said that the plans don't have it because we need to do a noise and vibration study. But less about that. I do appreciate that it does also point out to you that there's going to be noise. And I appreciate how that is not an easy thing to hear. And so I also want you to know that you're welcome to, and I'll put my email address in the chat for those of you who haven't emailed me yet. But if you do have follow-up questions or concerns and you want to put that on paper to me, I'm happy to receive that, and I want to do that. So I'll thank you now, and the real MC.
Thank you.
Yes.
I see just one more question because there's a hand up by the real MC. Do you want to have one last question?
Yeah, thank you very much. There was a question I put up, or there were some questions in the chat around the ditch type area beside the walkway. I think you're calling it the MUP. Are there going to be like water mitigation put in, or water drainage or something? There's concern that water is going to collect there, be standing water, flooding, any sort of issues around it.
There is a requirement. They're not done yet. And they're getting ahead of themselves a little bit. They're doing some work because they need to, but the final designs for the final works are still in the process of being done. There is a requirement that they have to do stormwater management. And if they have a low area, that they have to make sure it drains properly, that they're not having standing water left behind. Sometimes, again, it's unfortunate, but we don't have a huge amount of control for some of the construction activities that happen in the sequencing that they do. But when they're all said and done, they are supposed to be putting in some culverts, some catch basins where need be. They're capturing the water. They're making sure they have the overland drain working properly. So you have to be patient with us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In terms of next steps, Damon, obviously questions can continue as Damon has given you email, and you please feel free to copy my office. Is there any further meeting on this topic, Damon, or at a later point?
Yeah, so as a great question, Councillor. As I alluded to, but didn't get too clear on that, we will have a subsequent meeting once we've received the feedback from all of our other locations as well as yours. It seems to me, based on the time of the year we're at, that in the new year we'll meet and I'll discuss with Sarah and determine if this is something you'd like to sort of unpack the feedback as a smaller group or as a larger multi-community meeting, and I'll accommodate what you'd like. Truly and honestly, that is my pleasure.
Okay, thank you. So we'll keep in touch, and thank you for all your great questions and well thought out. Appreciate it very much. Trying to do the best we can. I'm really glad that these plans are coming. When I first got this presentation ahead of you, then this is for the 3 areas. I thought this was I believed made it that there was listening happening, and that they realized that this is important in terms of the future of everyone's comfort level to enjoy their properties. And anyway, that it's a very positive act. I should just add, in terms of the Woodruff pedestrian bridge, the city is talking, Damon, to the board about the right of way through. So I hope to hear more. So so our staff is working with the OCDSB just to finalize that on that little piece that goes through their property. So we'll keep you posted. Okay.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Councillor.
Well,
I did want to say there had been some questions about the switches, and that's the image that I put on the screen. And now I don't mean to keep you any longer than you need to be, Councillor. You still need to get home, and I hope you're not riding your bicycle, because I don't think that's going to be very safe tonight.
no.
Good. But for anyone who'd like to stick around and have Rashid walk them through this image that I put on the screen, I'm happy to do that. If you're not interested, we don't need to. I'll let you make your choice now. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. No, I'm actually going to take transit. So take care.
Bye, Councillor.
Bye-bye.